Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for clicking on this video. I'm gonna do something fun today. Just pass the time. Really, truly, if I'm being honest. You guys really liked my last video talking about the Ursa, comparing my Ursa to the Pyxis. I'm shooting right now on my Ursa, the Pyxis and the Ursa, and kind of my real world thoughts. I'm gonna do something a little bit fun, a little bit different today too. Again, I'm not big on gear videos, but I'm gonna do something fun. I just got my brand new Black Magic Pyxis cage. And so I'm going to be putting this together kind of on camera for my Pyxis. And then I'm also just going to talk, though, more specifically, just kind of since owning the Pyxis now for what, or I guess not even saying owning it, having it in hand for the past 3 months, just kind of some of my observations and thoughts about just kind of real world experience using the Black Magic Pyxis. Now, I got to give kind of a disclaimer up front. This video is not going to be, I'm not really into big gear videos, and I'm not here to try to convince you one camera or system or is better than the others or compare between. I'm just not into that stuff. This is a little bit more kind of like very specifically like real case world. Have been using this camera for the past 3 months, having been a Black Magic user for over 5 years now, or yeah, right around 5 years now. And so this is kind of more for people who, again, know about Black Magic, kind of know, have a lot of real world experience with different cameras and especially Black Magic in particular. And so I'm kind of just more speaking to them and to those people who maybe, again, you're interested in this camera, you know all the specs, it's not going to be a specs heavy video or anything like that, really. It's more just going to be like, okay, well, how does it compare to maybe some of my previous Black Magic experience, or maybe even some other cameras maybe that aren't Black Magic. But again, I'm not here to try and convince you that this camera is better than a Sony or a Canon or a Lumix or whatever else. There's lots of other people online that are doing that stuff, and yeah, that's just not me. But I want to talk about just kind of my experience having used this camera for the past three months, and then kind of almost comparing maybe some of that to just why I think this camera is a little bit unique and different from the other Black Magic cameras on the market, and maybe some things to really expect, and where I think it shines and where I think it maybe struggles. So that's what I'm going to do. My name is Coletrain. If you like, just, I don't know, filmmaking and you're more of you're from an indie filmmaking background, and that's what I'm about. I love indie filmmaking, and my channel is more going to be about that journey. And we'll talk about gear from here, and every now and again. But if you're into that stuff, you know what to do. Follow me, subscribe, and all that different stuff. So, again, I got this, and I just want to off the bat say none of this sponsored. I'm not that type of YouTuber, but this is from Tilta. I've ordered this a while ago. It's kind of been on back order, which I'm going to kind of get into that actually in this video too. But finally got it, and I want to build it. And like I said, I'm going to just build it. Hopefully I can stay focused and build and talk at the same time. But yeah, so this is the Tilta cage. And I'm really excited to dive into again, my kind of experiences with this camera while building this. If you hear a lot of like clinking and stuff like that during the video, sorry. Also, I will say I just got this as well too. I'm really excited about this. Again, none of this is sponsored. This is just me being excited. This is my Pelican case 1535 Air from Color Cases, which I found them on Instagram a little while ago. Love their just sweet colored cases, Pelican cases. And I got the blue with the orange handles, and with the check pack dividers. So I just got that as well today too. So I like, that's part of why I'm doing this, is like all the stuff came on the same day, which never happens. And so before I can really get my check pack dividers in the way I want to, I need to put my cage on my camera. So I'm going to do all that kind of in just this one sitting. So real world experience using the Pyxis. One of the things I would definitely say, I'll start off with some of the things. I'll start off with some of the things that I like and really enjoy about this camera. Again, not super spec. Oh, this is cool. Gave me a new MIDI tool for Tilta, like that. Again, not going to be a very spec driven video, but I do think it's worth mentioning. One of the things that we as Black Magic filmmakers and users have been really wanting, right, is just a camera that had the image quality and just the color science and everything that we love about Black Magic, but just in a more and a riggable body, which is great. But and I think for a while most have probably had given up on the idea of a full frame body, but they did do that. And I just have to say, I think it's specifically to the full frame aspect of this. Man, the full frame really makes a difference, and I really feel like Black Magic and its color science and their, you know, just how they handle the image, it really shines on full frame. I really think I really think that stands out. I've used lots of different cameras before, a lot of different cameras, different different companies and Sonys and Canons, all that stuff. I've used everything, and again, I think at this point in age, in the filmmaking world, you really can make amazing stuff with whatever brand you use. So it's not, again, a comparison thing, but I do think that, again, Black Magic has a little bit of a unique look, and I definitely feel like, and I've never felt this before, but it definitely really shines on a full frame sensor. And the way it handles lights, handles the highlights and the roll-offs, has always been spectacular, but it on a full frame, and just how it really, the sensor ingests light and processes that. I felt like, not to say that the Black Magic color had become stale, but they hit their color 5 science and been on that for a while, and so nothing had really changed as far as their color and their image quality. But this is their first kind of major one. It's not, again, an adjustment to the color science, but more so to the sensor. And so it shows, though. It shows, having, again, used all the pockets, well, not the full frame pocket, but all the pockets and all the Ursas, it certainly does show. I gotta make sure that I'm like paying attention. Like, again, I just realized multitasking for me is not one of my strong suits. So talking to you guys and building this is not as easy as I really thought. And I don't want to get halfway through this video and realize, oop, I'm putting together this thing wrong. I'm just gonna talk until basically I'm done building this thing, and then that'll pretty much be it. But the second thing I want to highlight that I think is I really enjoy, and I think, again, from a real world case, use case scenario, I think it's important to say is, man, the build quality on this camera is phenomenal. It is phenomenal. And I think that that's something that gets overlooked often. But listen, you're going to invest $3,000 and plus all the extra stuff. You're going to invest a decent amount of money into this camera. And I think one of the knocks on Black Magic, especially the pocket line, that, again, us Black Magic users have probably just gotten used to, but one of the knocks that was real was their the build quality of the pockets wasn't very great. They're plastic, they felt cheap, and again, they did the work, they did the job, they were great, but they weren't great. Now, again, coming from, I have an Ursa, so I have also been on the other side of that, and I love the build quality on the Ursa, right? But you pay for it. It's a much bigger, heavier body, and so you kind of expect that for a camera at that price point. You want this thing to be durable and to be trustworthy. Now, listen, I've only had it for 3 months. You don't know that until it's gone through it and been through its paces. But Black Magic's always had a great track record with that. And again, now bringing that to the outside of the body, outside of the camera itself, that matters. So I would say, listen, build quality for sure is something that I think is important and can be easily overlooked in, like, especially YouTube space. We love talking about specs and things of that nature. But I do really believe in build quality, and this is your camera, this is your tool, this is the thing that you're going to be really investing a lot of time, a lot of energy into, and you want this thing to be reliable, and you want to be able to trust that it's not going to fail with a little bit of dust or a little bit of dirt, or again with a little bit of wear and tear. You want to know that this thing is a tank. And I will tell you, from having used the Ursa for 5 years, that thing is a tank. That thing for me has taken a beating, and it's still ticking, and it just, man, it handles like a tank. And I think something to commend, and something, again, just to highlight and point out, that if you're coming from especially the pocket line, that's gonna be different for you. You're gonna feel that as soon as you pull it out of the box. At least for me, I think it matters. I think it's really a win and something to really kind of highlight and to be excited about. Okay, second thing that I think is important to highlight about this, I think, again, using this, I think it's noteworthy, something of note, is the balance of the camera. Now, listen, everyone was excited about the riggability, and it's a box style camera, and that was great. And we were for sure excited for that and wanting and clamoring for that, and that's all great. But I think some of the things that get overlooked with especially these hybrid kind of bodies that are not like, it's not maybe an airy or a red or something like that, but it's not just that it's a box style riggable camera. It's the idea of, again, maybe in scenarios where you're a solo shooter, it's as you're building onto this thing, what is the balance to it? How does it feel in your hands? I think that was honestly one of the probably biggest frustrations with the Pocket line, and even to a degree the Ursa line, was you could still build on. You could rig it out. You could rig out a Pocket and put a cage on it and put stuff on it that you needed to. But what happened oftentimes when you did that was it became very clunky, and the Pocket would start to build wide, right? And so you would hold it like this, and you would build it out, and then it felt very clunky. And so as you added more stuff onto it, especially lenses, maybe longer lenses, it just the access point and everything else, it just wasn't a great camera to then handheld operate, especially on top of it not having in-axis stabilization. So I thought it was interesting when they released this camera and they announced this camera. It didn't have an in-body stabilization. I thought that was kind of a curious choice. I thought, man, I wonder if that would be a deal breaker. I will tell you, having used this, one of the first shoots I had, I was very excited to use it. I was using it to shoot for my church. It was actually kind of an outreach event, and man, I threw a Canon 7200 EF lens on there, 2.8, right? Very big, very, very heavy lens, and immediately noticed how well that camera was balanced in my hands and felt good. And using it in a run and gun scenario, which I don't do often, it still felt, using it in that kind of a handheld run and gun situation, even though it didn't have in-body stabilization, it felt really balanced, and really it like kind of almost counteracted and had a good sense of gravity in my hands, and being able to use that without in-body stabilization. I thought that was really important, and just something to note, because again, I think we can get wrapped up in, well, does it have in-body stabilization, or all the kind of the specky things. But there is from a camera operating perspective, there is more to it than just those kind of gadgets and gizmos. It really comes down to how a camera is designed, and is it designed well to not just be a body by itself, but as you add stuff onto it and rig onto it, how does it respond to that? That's a very important element that I don't think, again, many people think about until you're kind of in the real world and you're filming. And so I think this camera actually excels. I feel like I lost my bag of screws. I think this camera excels. Obviously, it excels past the Pocket in the sense that it's riggable, but also it has a balance in it, and it lends itself to more run and gun scenarios. Even with big heavy lenses or being rigged out, it still lends itself to that with having good balance in your hands. And I also think it does better than that than the Ursa, because the Ursa you could build out and it was great in that scenario, but that camera was heavy, and it was actually very back heavy as well too. And so you could do it, but your arms are for sure going to feel it within a very short amount of time. And also just, secondly too, it didn't always, it could be, especially putting like a 7200 lens on there, it could get very kind of like, just get off its axis, and not kind of, I think, thought out well for that. But again, I don't think that camera was made for that use case, right? Whereas it felt like they're much more intentional about thinking about that for this camera, and that was something that I thought was very important. And just something to note is like this this camera is this camera I think is much more I think just well balanced. As again, this isn't a shot at any other kind of brand or anything like that, but I feel like, again, you think about some of like the FX III, or again, some of the Lumix stuff, or even maybe some of the Canon mirrorless type cameras. But again, you kind of have that mirrorless design, right? And it's kind of built like an old like camera. And I think again, those cameras were again much better to rig out than the pockets in those cameras. But you would start to rig them out, and you starting to think about, like, I've seen them even with, I think, like the A7S IIIs, right? Like there's these like kind of new rigs where you're like supposed to leave the screen out, and then they're building all these like extra components onto the A7S to kind of like build it out long, so then it still feels like a cinema rig. And again, that's fine, that's great, if like that's your thing, it's super great. But for that to just kind of naturally be how this thing is built, it's just built. Again, you look at it, you think of a Red camera, or you think about, obviously a much smaller but an ARRI style camera. It's built out with this idea of, like, again, if I build back with maybe more batteries and things of that nature, or you build forward with a lens, now you're gonna have a natural kind of center point of gravity that is heavy, can build quality is really good, and you're not gonna start to build wide. And it just is kind of lends itself to a more conducive, a more I think efficient riggable system, because I think you can have a camera that's riggable, but it's not scalable as it rigs, if that makes sense. Okay, I want to jump into, I'm kind of getting close to the end here. I'm not stalling, I just can't really focus on two things at one time, but I want to kind of, as I get to the end, I want to talk about a couple of things that I think are, again, important to note, but are maybe things that were kind of frustrating to me. And I think, again, is important to note and to be honest, even as a fan of Black Magic, I think these are things to talk about and just to be aware of. Number one is being battery life. I will say to you, again, having using Black Magic for a long time, especially with the pocket line, man, the battery life was always a pain point and very frustrating. And so when they announced this new camera, they switched over to the new, I forget what they're the Sony, and not NPs, but whatever they are, BPUs, the BP line. It was exciting. Like, okay, cool, we're gonna get away from the MP line. That was terrible and it sucked, and so we're away from that. But I will tell you, having used this camera for the last 3 months, this camera is pretty power hungry. Now, I don't know if that's because of the sensor and just how much, again, kind of coming from like the experience of them on all their Super 35s or the crop mouse or their Micro Four Thirds sensors. Maybe it just feels different. I mean, it's kind of hard to gauge because you're now going across different battery systems and all that different stuff. But it just, man, right away felt like, man, these things, it's burning through batteries pretty fast. I talked about in my last video about this battery, or not my last video, but the video about the Ursa and the Pyxis. I talked about this battery. Even with this giant BPU 100, man, it chews to this thing a lot. Now, I was like, okay, was it because I'm using DTAP 2? I wasn't sure. No, it just, I will just tell you, after kind of playing through settings and figuring out different things, it is a very power hungry camera. So it's a bit of a bummer, because again, the BPUs are much more reliable than the NPFs, and even with the old NPFs, you would just, man, it just felt like you couldn't really rely on that little like battery bar. You're like, okay, it says like 25%, but it could die at any moment, right? So these are more reliable, and a little bit more, I guess, showmanship in those batteries, but it still burns. This camera does burn through these batteries pretty fast, I will tell you. Now, with that, I do want to say, kind of a newer development within the last week. I just learned that Black Magic has released a firmware update for this camera, firmware update 9.2, and they talked about better battery life in there. And from all the comments I've seen from people who are on the forums and different things like that, everyone has made note of their battery life increasing somewhere in the range of 50%. Now, I'm going to tell you, as a person who's been around the block a few times, that seems unlikely. Like my kind of skeptical meter goes up of 50% increase. Like that seems not realistic, but I have heard it a number of times, or seen it a number of times in different forms and different comments of no. it is a noticeable increase on the battery. And so I just downloaded that yesterday. I haven't had a chance to really like use, test that out, use case that, whatever that phrase is. And so, but I don't know, the proof's in the pudding. I guess a lot of people are really noticing or really seeing a noticeable battery increase with that. So I had just also ordered from Tilta. Part of the cage that I ordered is I also ordered the V-mount attachment that goes on the back of this. So I'd already kind of just, after a couple months, have just kind of decided like, no, I just not really excited with this battery change. And so I decided to go to a V-mount. So I think I'm still going to stick to that. But I am also going to test out the V-mount. Test out the firmware update and see again like how much of a change did that make. But just know the battery life it is improved from before, no question, but it is not quite the improvement that I initially thought. But we will give room for the firmware update to see how that changes things. So little update. Here's my cage. We're building it out again. Riggable, right? That's the whole thing. Let me make sure you guys can see, but it's riggable. And again, now adding this cage with so many more mounting points. And this guy here on the right, this is a SSD holder. So if you're, I do like to tend to record on SSDs, but I will tell you, this is a kind of additional point. I have enjoyed the CFast options on here way more than the SDs that were on the pockets. But yeah, I do like having a SSD option here. So it has that option right here, which I'm a big fan of. On the back here would be where that battery, that V-mount battery accessory that I just talked about, that'll go here. So excited about that. And yeah, we're getting there. Anyways, a couple things I want to hit before we sign off here. Things I think are of note. And this is probably again, kind of going to my last point about the V-mount and the batteries. I will say, I think one thing that's been a little bit disappointing about this camera, and I do think I'm confident this is going to change, is, so they released this camera, right? They announced this camera last, I don't know what it was, I think spring, March, April time. The camera didn't start really shipping till about October-ish. Some people were getting September, but mostly October. So they announced it, and they had all this different stuff that they, again, the whole kind of selling point of this camera was riggable, right? You had all these different things. They announced the camera. The monitor system was kind of strange. It was like, this doesn't make sense. I will tell you, I've been using it. This side screen is kind of clunky to use. So okay, cool. Then they had the Pyxis, the new Pyxis monitor. Okay, cool. That's gonna come out. All these again cages and things like that. I will tell you, it feels like they really kind of released this camera unreleased and or it's like unpolished or unfinished. It took so long. I mean, I ordered a lot of this stuff right when I ordered the camera. It took forever for a lot of this stuff to come in. It feels like, I don't know if it's so many people are ordering the camera, so everything is out of stock. But man, all the cages from Tilta and Condor Blue and the people who make these things, a lot of stuff felt like it was out of I don't know if it was out of stock. It was like you're pre-ordering it and you're waiting forever for it to show up. So I've had this camera for 3 months and I've really been hesitant to take it on any of my commercial shoots because it doesn't feel complete and it doesn't feel like I'm set up for success to use it the way I need to use it. Where I need to rig it out and have the right mounting plates and have rods and where I can have my follow focus system and things of that nature. I can't really do that when the things that were going to make this camera complete aren't readily available. The V-mount batteries, again, even just the Black Magic monitoring thing. I ordered that monitor and I'm still waiting. I have no idea when that's going to come. And so it's been a little interesting because it feels like they're like, they promise a lot of different things, and maybe this is just where Black Magic is a little bit smaller and not as big as the Canons and the Sonys and things of that nature. But it feels like they released something that wasn't. The camera is fine and the camera's ready to release, but because it's so dependent on being riggable, it doesn't feel complete until I get all the stuff that's needed to make it work. And I've feel like I've had a hard time tracking down the stuff I need to complete this camera, and I feel like I've seen a fair amount of that online as well too. So I'm really excited to be able to get the cage and the batteries and all the things that I'm going to need. I'm really excited for whenever that monitor is going to come out for the Pyxis because from what I've used, from how I use it, I think the camera's great, but it does feel limiting, and I've been on a set with this thing and it felt very not confident in it, not in the camera or the sensor, but just in like, okay, do I have enough batteries? Am I going to be able to power enough things off of that battery to make sure everyone's the video village and the monitors and the follow focus system are all going to be, and director's cam are all going to be powered. I don't feel confident in that yet. I think I will when I'm able to get all these other accessories that's going to allow me to do that. So that's just been very interesting. I think in 6 months that won't even be an issue. So that'll be fine once everything's made available. But it feels like a rocky start if I'm going to be completely honest about it. Okay, last thing here. I don't know what I've done wrong. I feel like this is supposed to be tied down to something, but apparently not. But last thing I wanted to hit, and I wanted to speak about this camera. And again, what I've noticed, again, a thing that I've not been wild about, I think something to note, and this is probably my biggest disappointment about this camera, I've been disappointed in the dual native ISO. Now, I will tell you, again, it's not a specs thing. I'm not trying to compare it to anyone else. I never expected this thing to be, try and compete with Sony as far as like its dual native ISO or its performance in the low light. But man, right, a little bit after they announced the camera, I remember seeing, oh wow, it's dual native ISO. Very interested to see how that plays out. My first shoot with this camera, I actually picked up first shoot the day, like 2 days after I got the camera, and it was going to be kind of a shoot in a little bit of a darker setting. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll be able to see what this thing can do in a dual native ISO. I shot some stuff at this bed space native ISO, it's lower base native ISO, and then was like, let me switch over to the higher native ISO, which is at 3200, and just see what this thing performs at. And I remember, like, even just looking on the monitor going, wow, it seems very noisy, and to the point to where I had to go outside and like Google like I was like, wait, what am I at the right second native ISO, because this thing feels incredibly noisy and it doesn't make sense. And I found out I was, and it was interesting. It really kind of hit me on the way home from that shoot, because I had to like search and Google, and I had to go on the like forum on the Black Magic, and I was on the website, and I was like really kind of hard to find. And I realized I was like, you know what, I don't think Black Magic's really pushing this, because I think they probably know it's not a very good dual native ISO. And again, I think knowing what you buy a camera for and what its strong suit is, I think is really important. I don't think Black Magic is really meant to be this low light performing, like your solo operator can shoot in any scenario place. It's again for more of commercial type, low indie budget films where you're going to be able to light the set the way that you want and set it up the way you want it, and it performs great in that. But was a little disappointed in that. So I have to do some more testing with that to see and kind of see maybe it's something that I didn't do correctly, or just maybe there's a little bit more refined with that. I was able to pull it into Resolve, and with their noise reduction, it looks great and it all worked out. But it was like shocking to me seeing it and being like, wait, this can't be the dual native ISO, because it's not very good. Yeah, again, I know this is kind of a very kind of off the cuff, not very produced video, but just want to talk about that as I built my cage that I have now built. I'm very happy about it. I'm gonna put it in my Pelican case here and get it kind of fitted the way I want. But let me know. I would love to know from you guys in the comment section what you guys feel, what you guys thought, especially if you've had your hands on the Pyxis, what your experience has been in the real world. I think everyone has their own kind of like view how they see these things and what they find to be pluses or negatives or frustrations or things they're really pleasantly surprised by. So I would love to hear from you guys, or again, what maybe some questions that you guys might have. I'd love to try and answer those in the comments to the best of my ability. I really loved how in my last video you guys asked questions about certain things, and it made me even kind of pursue some tests to try and answer those for you guys. But that's all I have for you guys. Hopefully this video doesn't end up being too long. It was supposed to be short and sweet. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. Have any questions, drop them in the comments. Make sure to check out my next few videos as I kind of explore some more stuff about the Pyxis. And we'll see you next time.